Welcome to Stuff You Missed in History Class, a production of iHeartRadio.
Happy Friday, I'm Tracy V. Wilson.
And I'm Holly Fry.
We spent all this week talking about Ernest Shackleton going to Antarctica and the Endurance, which has recently been discovered at the bottom of the ocean.
Yes.
In Antarctica. We both have various feelings. There are multiple leadership books that are like examples from Ernest Shackleton. So I'm going to, number one, be clear. I've never read any of these books, but I can imagine what they are like because a lot of the stuff that he did fits into sort of the general umbrella of trying to have good leadership, like trying to treat your team fairly, trying to keep people's morale up, changing your mind when there's new information, and also trying to make sure that none of them died. Like all of that, sure. But then there's also another part of good leadership is communicating with people when your plans change. Like,
right?
For example, telling them it's going to be another entire year before you take your trek across the entirety of Antarctica. Like, if he had found a way to send some word about that before leaving South Sturgeon Island, it's possible that the Ross Sea Party would have had a much better time of things and possibly not had lost 3 men.
Yes. I have so many feelings about this. And as I was telling you, they're hard to really communicate because they involve a lot of swearing. Like, I don't understand any of this. I mean, I understand what happened, but like, I don't see the impetus for it. Like, what was there to gain from crossing all of Antarctica other than to say, I crossed all of Antarctica?
I mean, that was it.
The drive of your ego endangered 50 plus people.
Well, and there's also, I mean, there was scientific work going on, and a number of books about this whole period have noted, like, yes, there were actual important scientific discoveries happening on these expeditions, but a big part of it was really trying to be first to do something. Am I remembering rightly that you were the one who researched our episodes about summiting Mount Everest for the first time? Because we have similar feelings about that, I think. Like,
yes.
The most cynical way to look at this whole thing is that a bunch of guys made a big, big problem for themselves and then left all kinds of litter behind on Antarctica.
Right. Well, and I mean, I have many, many thoughts about it. Like, I understand to some degree. I don't have it, but I see how other people have like that drive to explore and how there have certainly been instances where that has led to the betterment of humans in some way or another. But so often it's just not. And so it's hard for me. I'm like, why don't you do something else with your time? And then there's the psychology of it gets real fascinating for me.
Yeah.
Before we even get into like this mess of like crossing the entire continent, we didn't mention it in the episode, but that note that Scott wrote about Shackleton, that it's not, he did very well in his job. It's just the illness.
Oh, sure.
Really sounds like he's calling Shackleton a wuss.
Kind of.
He's like,
yeah.
Oh, he doesn't have the constitution for this kind of work. I'm a real man. I can handle it. Like, there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah.
Aside from that, as we get into the discussions of morale, it's one of those things where you were pointing out, like, Shackleton writing about his men and being like, why aren't they being more
right?
But the thing is, his brain was also scrambled by that point. So, like, to him, the way you manage a horrible situation in that way, when he has lost the clarity of his lens, is like, everyone just needs to do better and we're fine. Like, I envision it, because I have had that moment where I'm just like white knuckling and like, everybody just do your very best. It's going to be okay. And really, like, they don't need that. That's not helping.
Right.
And simultaneously, I can't fault any of those dudes for being like,
well, and I have thought about, like, we've talked before, the two of us have been sheltered from a lot of the worst parts of the pandemic, and yet still it has been really hard. And there have been moments in my pretty generally comfortable, privileged life where I've been like, man, I cannot deal with this. And so the idea that these guys can have spent months and months and months and months trapped on the ice and then spent 4 days in just terrible conditions trying to make this sea crossing. I also, when I got there, would just want to lie around.
I can't handle if a person tells too many puns and I want to stab them in the eye. So, like, I would have killed all of my comrades in this situation.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine how horrible it is, especially when you consider, right, obviously, it's a completely different world and they're not accustomed to what we have. But, like, here are the 28 people you are spending the next unreal period of time with, and you have no contact with the outside world. They are your world.
That's it.
The end. Like, no. Yeah. Can you imagine if we and 26 of our coworkers all had to do something together for a year and a half with no one else to talk to or learn from? Like, no.
And no sunlight for multiple weeks in the middle of it.
No shade to anyone involved at that point. No. It's just not something that most people would be capable of.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember one time some years ago being at a science museum, and the IMAX feature that day was one of the films about like one of the really deadly seasons on Everest. And I think they were talking about how a lot of people, when they're trying to climb Everest, get this cough that's really bad that can they can break their own ribs coughing. And I was like, oh, never, ever trying this myself. Like, totally not for me. Don't understand the drive that would lead people to do this. And like, to some extent, I have the same feeling about some of these folks. Because like when having had the whole endurance situation happen, then trying to go to Antarctica again, and 7 of the, I think 18 people were people who had been on the endurance. I was like, really?
Yeah. I mean, I think there must be something in your nature that's just cut out for it and driven to it.
Yeah.
I don't understand it. I mean, I had a close friend in high school who went to Antarctica for some science stuff, like, while I was in college. And he really enjoyed it, but he was also on a very well-established, pretty, but even so, and us writing letters back and forth and stuff, I mean, he talked about how isolating and strange it was, and he is an introvert, but he still, had that thing of, ooh, I couldn't, there are people that are there for years.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and that's a person who doesn't particularly need to socialize a lot and has, much more communication with the outside world than any of these people had. So I really can't imagine the psychological profile.
Yeah. I'm also, I'm not at all judging the people who spend their lives doing work at a research station in Antarctica, but I will judge the inexperienced people who were like, I'm going to pay $20,000 to go on this tour that's going to put myself and everyone with me at risk because I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I want to empathize with those kinds of impulses, but they're so alien to me. I just, Anyway, I'm sure many of the things I do are completely alien to other people, but so much danger and so much harrowing misery, right?
Yeah.
Just no bueno.
No, I don't enjoy being cold, so.
I don't either. I hate it so much. That's a big part of it.
So every once in a while, I'll sort of think, hey, what if one day I did a through hike of the Appalachian Trail? But then I'll also be like, when you went for a walk yesterday, you made your decision of where to go by not having to walk up the extremely mild hill.
Right? I mean, I think about this when we're talking about these portions where they're having to go on foot, relaying supplies back and forth. And I think about just as a comparative, right? The most physically difficult thing I've ever done was run a marathon.
Yeah.
Which I did the day after I ran a half, which is foolish. But even so, also the most easy-paced version you could. I didn't like hard run that, as you know. And you ran the half marathon with me when we were there. That was 10 years ago, by the way, if you just want to break your brain. That was plenty hard for me, and I would never want to do it again. So imagining that day after day after day, carrying pounds of equipment and supplies.
Yeah.
No, I do not wonder that he died in his 40s.
Yeah. Well, and there's also the part where none of the food that they were eating.
Right. Their nutrition is not on point.
Yeah. Like I thought about getting in some more detail about this in the episode, and I didn't. But like a lot of the stuff that they were eating was like, this is dried beef mixed with tallow that you would maybe melt with some broth. And like as the animals died, they would be eating the animals' food. And this all sounds miserable to me. And then everyone got dysentery, and like having frostbite and dysentery at the same time. That sounds awful. So many things. Not for me. Nope.
No. Oh, nay. I would like to stay in a pretty hotel where someone will bring me bacon in the morning to my room. That would be great. That sounds amazing. I don't need to be applauded. It's cool. I would like to be comfy. Wouldn't that be funny, though? Oh, Holly stayed for a week at a fabulous hotel. She's amazing. Yeah. Can you believe what she's achieved?
The first person ever to spend a whole week at this hotel.
That would be hilarious. But it would, no. I don't know. I sound so angry at these people through history, and I so don't. It's the imperiling of so many other people.
Yeah.
That makes me so frustrated, because I don't. Again, I feel like because I want it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really a valid reason.
Yeah. So complicated and frustrated feelings about much of this. I think a lot of those supply depots just still there. Various stuff scattered across Antarctica, still there, as far as I know. Maybe at some point there'll be some kind of hopefully better planned and equipped and more current medicine and mental health technologies going into that, if that were a thing to happen. And there's lots of photos from the shipwreck online and various news reporting. Folks want to go look at it. So anyway, that was our look back at Shackleton. And happy Friday again, everybody. If you are in Antarctica right now, I hope it's going well. It's winter. It's probably really cold in Antarctica right now. As spring is starting to very tentatively arrive here in Massachusetts.
We have beautiful spring right now.
Yeah, you're well into it.
We had to have our deck redone because our one that was original to the house was like 24 years old and was really getting a little precarious. And so we had our deck redone over the winter. And so now like I can actually go out there in the morning, and I've put my new rose bushes, which I go out and treat to grow each day. And, I started my new composting bin out there. And like, I feel more spring has sprung than I have in many years, because I have an outdoor space that I can visit in the morning with my coffee. And so I'm very excited for spring this year.
Yeah, we're getting things just starting to bud out here. So happy spring if it's spring for you. If it's not spring for you, I hope the winter is not going to be too rough. And, whatever's coming up on your weekend, I hope that goes okay. We'll be back with a Saturday Classic tomorrow, and then some Monday, brand new episode. And you can subscribe to the show if you haven't. We're on the iHeartRadio app and anywhere else you like to get your podcasts. Stuff You Missed in History Class is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.